Alright guys, if you have stumbled across my video, it is because you are looking to start welding and getting into welding. And you are wondering about welding and what all the equipment is you might need. So today during this video, I'm going to go over personal protection equipment, or as the video title says, PPE. I'm going to refer to it as PPE. Again, PPE standing for personal protection equipment. I'm just going to go over some basic things you're going to want. I'm also going to go over what kind of welder I use, and it does not matter what welder you use. I'm just going to put that out there. Just find a welder anywhere, at a pawn shop, anywhere. You can find welders at your local store like Lowe's, Home Depot, Harbor Freight, your local welding supply store like Norco, Ox-Arc, places like that. Now this is going to be a series video. And now let's just jump right into the video. Again, I'm going to make this into a series. So today I'm just going over PPE. And later on in videos, I'm going to go over how to actually weld and what types of welding we are doing and how to set up the machine for what you're wanting to do. Now in the beginning of this video, I'm going to go over my three most important PPE, or no, my two most important, that I think are most important PPE equipment of all time. So first we're going to go with the helmet. Now, here's the standard helmet that I use. I got mine from my local welding supply place called Norco. But you can get yours from wherever. You can get it from a pawn shop. You can get it from Harbor Freight. You can get it from your local welding supply store. You can borrow with friends if they have one. Just helmet, I think, is number one most important. Because without this, you will go blind. Now, the kind I recommend is an auto darkening with different shades, darknesses in it. Because they are so versatile and you can use them for almost anything. This is a weld mark, and I think at the time I paid about $100 for this. Now, you do not need to go as fancy as this because it's got all of the sensitivity, the shades 9 to 13, the delay, it's got grind mode, it's got weld mode. You don't have to go as fancy as this. You don't even have, you don't have to go near as fancy. One of the other options on the list for welding helmets would be this Chicago Electric welding helmet. I think this one was about $50 at the time of recording. I got it at my local Harbor Freight. It just does 9 through 13 on the welding, just like the other helmet, and it has sensitivity and delay like the other helmet, but it does not have grind mode, and it doesn't have as wide a field of view. That would be how wide you see out the helmet. It does not have near as wide a field of view. Now, benefits to buying this one is that it's not near as expensive, and you can find it at your local Harbor Freight. Again, those are helmets. Some of the benefits to wearing helmets are that you won't go blind, because if you weld, if you know anything about welding, you know that you're creating a big arc, really bright, super hot, fiery arc. And you're melting metal to stick two pieces of metal together. And we'll talk more about that in other videos. But that's the basics of how welding works. So the helmet prevents you from going blind by looking at that. The helmet also will prevent you from getting sunburns on your face, because again, you got really bright light going on there. Almost like brighter than the sun bright, but not quite as bright. And so next, okay, so that's the helmet. You need the helmet so you don't go blind or get super bad sunburns. Next, my second most important item on the list. Gloves. Gloves. Now, some people like to use any old pair of gloves they have around, but I do not recommend that. If you're going to get welding gloves, I always recommend some kind of thick welding made gloves because, again, you're making lots of fire and lots of spark. So big, thick, heavy welding gloves are my recommendation. Now, I got these at Lincoln, or these at my local D&B. They're made by Lincoln Electric. I love these gloves. They last a long time. I think I paid like $60 for them. Now, on the cheaper side, you can, well, less expensive side, I shouldn't say cheaper because it's still a very good quality, is these Vulcan Defender from Harbor Freight. And I think for these I paid around $20, but they're just as thick. They have less arm protection, but they're just as thick and they work just as well. They just don't last near as long. But if you're starting out, these are great, and I recommend just getting any kind of welding gloves you can. So gloves and helmets are my most important recommendations, or the two most important things I could recommend to somebody if you're just starting out for PPE. Now, next on the list of PPE that I would recommend somebody get are a pair of sleeves like this one. These are sleeves that go on your arms, and they act like gloves for your arms. Now, this one's made by Lincoln. I don't remember the price. I don't know the price on these. And yes, you can see you do get burn holes in them, but they will save your arms from getting tons of little burns like mine have. You can get those from Lincoln, or you can get these very nice, affordable ones, again, from Harbor Freight. This is not a Harbor Freight sponsored video, by the way. But you can get them from Harbor Freight. Now, something else. You're going to want really nice, non-flammable shirts. This one probably not very good for that. And non-flammable pants. And good, sturdy, non-flammable shoes as well. And then I would also recommend either an apron, like this really thick welding apron. You can get these at Lowe's, Harbor Freight, Home Depot. You can get them at your local welding supply store like Norco or Ox-Arc, places like that. But if you're doing lots and lots of welding and you don't want to have to keep taking on and putting off your sleeves every time, or it's kind of annoying to have sleeves or whatnot, then one thing I heavily recommend is getting yourself a thick Carhartt-like welding jacket. Now, this is not required, but I heavily recommend it. Get yourself a nice thick Carhartt or a nice thick denim jacket of some kind. This is a denim outside and then it's a fabric inside, but the denim is really thick, so it hardly ever burns through. That's what I recommend. Now, you don't have to get any of that. You can weld with just your non-flammable shirt, non-flammable pants, non-flammable shoes, gloves, and a helmet, and a welding helmet. And again, it doesn't matter where you get the welding helmet. I always recommend an auto darkening with variable shade helmet, so you can do all kinds of welding with it. And it doesn't matter where you get the welding gloves, just make sure they're welding rated gloves. That is what I always recommend. Now, if we step over to the welder that I use, because that's mainly all the PPE that I got for you guys. Now, let me reposition the camera. But if we're stepping over to the welder I recommend, or that I use, don't recommend, but I use, I use this titanium from Harbor Freight Unlimited 200 welder. Reason why I like this welder for what I do is it's a multi-process welder, so it'll do a little of everything. It'll do your hardwire, which we'll get into hardwire. It'll do gas with the hardwire. It'll do your flux core. And that's all done out of this MIG gun right here. It'll do flux core and hardwire right out this MIG gun. No need for anything fancy there. And then it'll also do a little bit of stick with your stinger. And then one thing that I don't have it set up for right now, but it will do, and I have the stuff to set it up, is it will do TIG welding. Now in this series, I'm not going to go over TIG welding in this series unless you guys really want me to go over TIG welding. But what I will do is I will go over probably first your flux core, your gasless flux core, then I'll go over your gas hardwire, and then I'll go over your stick so you can learn basic welding and start doing those home projects that you've been putting off for a while. You know who you are, guys. You've been putting off those home projects because you don't know how to fix them and you need a welder to do it. So, I'm going to have this series here to show you basic ways on how to weld so your welds look decent and your welds look clean. So that is pretty much all that I have for you guys today. But if you guys could like, subscribe, and give a comment, that would be great, because I appreciate all the help and support you guys give. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will try and answer them in a future video or in the comments about any questions you guys have at all. Just leave them in the comments, and I will try and answer them. Again, the things that I recommend the most are a helmet and gloves. Welding helmet and gloves. When it comes to the welder, any welder will do. I'm going to show you the 3 basic types of welding. And if you guys really want to, I will show you TIG welding in a video in this series. It'll probably be the last video in the series if you guys really want it. But I have to get a bunch of people to comment that they want it for me to do it. And then if you guys have any questions about, like, why is my weld turning out like this when I do it exactly like you say to, or why is my weld doing this, or how do I prevent this, like, how do you prevent porosity? We'll get into that and other questions that you guys might have. But this is Harrison Holbrook from HHweldingID.com. You can go check out my website at HHweldingID.com. All lowercase, no spaces. And if you guys need any welding services, I provide welding services, and I provide tons of it. I can do light machinery. I make custom grills. I do welding carports, columns, you name it. If you guys want to see how to weld carport columns, I'll make a video on that. Just leave it in the comments. And this is Harrison from HH Welding signing out, saying be safe and weld on.